So the Chiefs just signed a few very intriguing undrafted free agents, including one of the most athletic linebackers basically ever, a couple wide receivers, one of them having a real shot at making the roster, as well as a tight end that could find himself in the Travis Kelce role somewhere down the road. So let's talk about it. But first, how about those? All right, every year after the draft, every NFL team immediately signs a bunch of undrafted free agents, and honestly, you can't sleep on them. Byron Pringle, Turk Wharton, Carson Steele, Chris Roland Wallace, Jack Cochran, Mike Caliendo, among others. Those are all undrafted players who found a role on the Chiefs roster at one point in time, with the last few I mentioned actually still being on the roster. Well, the goal here is to get the rosters up to 90, and then over the course of minicamp, training camp, and preseason, find the best 53 of them all and keeping them. 16 or so of those players that the Chiefs do let go just prior to the season could find themselves on the practice squad. And while that's a conversation for a later video, I did want to look at some UDFAs the Chiefs signed, starting with Fresno State wide receiver Mac Delena. The 23-year-old wideout lined up primarily on the outside, even though he's built like a slot guy. He's 5'9", 180 pounds, and ran a 4.41 40. That speed helped him be able to quickly create separation on shorter routes or win vertically down the field. This guy was a ton of fun to watch his film. I watched it today. Very reliable hands, catching several deep passes that were extremely impressive grabs. His ball tracking skills are very solid, which was evidenced by the fact that he only dropped 4 of the 178 targets thrown his way. He had a breakout year in 2024, catching 64 passes for 1,065 yards, nearly a 17-yard average, and he snagged 8 of those for touchdowns. Well, that led the team in receiving, and while I do think the wide receiver room will be a tough one to crack, with another guy that they signed I'll talk about later, I think having a better shot at making the roster. His former teammate in Nico Remigio managed to make the roster as the team's returner last season, so you never know what could happen. At this point in time, I would say Delena has a shot to make the practice squad. Another pass catcher the Chiefs signed was former Clemson tight end Jake Briningstool. He was tight end 10 on Dane Brugler's draft guide with a 5th round grade. The 6'6", 241 tight end played nearly 60% of the time out of the slot, so he's more of a hybrid tight end and actually became the all-time leader for catches by a tight end for the school with 127. He had back-to-back seasons of roughly 50 catches for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns in each. He only missed 1 game the last 3 years due to injury as well, and even though he's got strong, reliable hands and is impressive as a receiving tight end, he's not afraid to get his hands dirty and block, with his blocking ability actually improving every single year. He's not the greatest after the catch and can work on better breaking tackles, but he is a pretty intriguing prospect considering how the Chiefs like to use their tight ends. Kelce lines up a lot in the slot, and if Briningstool is somehow able to make the roster, maybe he finds himself with a role to play in the offense once Kelce hangs it up, or just as a rotational guy in general. I mean, it's worth noting that the Chiefs gave him $234,000 in total guarantees, which is more than some late-round picks will end up getting. And then Jared Wiley, the Chiefs' 4th-round pick from last year, may not be fully ready for NFL action at the start of the season. Maybe he starts out on the PUP list because he tore his ACL in November, so I think Briningstool is a sneaky guy to keep eyes on. Somebody else to keep eyes on is one of the most athletic linebackers ever, at least from a testing perspective, because the Chiefs signed linebacker Brandon George from the Pittsburgh Panthers, and this man is an absolute unit, a machine. He might actually be AI, I'm not sure. He's 6'3", 240 pounds of pure muscle, boasting a relative athletic score of 9.98, which is almost perfect. The only thing not in green on here is his 40 time, but his 10 and 20 yard split, shuttle, and 3-cone are all elite. Something else you need to see is his vertical. 42.5 inches. Holy smokes, he can almost leap over a building. And here's the craziest part. He tested so well that this ranks him 7th out of 3,182 linebackers from 1987 to 2025. 7th out of over 3,000. Good God almighty. For comparison's sake, one of the strongest pound-for-pound guys on the team is linebacker Leo Chenal. Well, his relative athletic score was a 9.99, and he was ranked 3rd at the time of his testing. So the Chiefs currently have the 3rd strongest linebacker on the roster. Meanwhile, they also just signed the 7th strongest, who went undrafted but is now on the 90-man roster. To be clear, testing isn't everything, but something you can't coach for the most part is freakish athleticism. You can always help them hone in on their technique. George started all 13 games at middle linebacker in 2024, racking up 80 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 1 INT, a fumble recovery, and I guess basically the kitchen sink is what I'm trying to say with his stats. I have no idea if he'll actually make the roster, but last year the Chiefs' initial 53-man roster included 5 linebackers: Nick Bolton, Leo Chenal, Jack Cochran, Cam Jones, and Drew Tranquill. Well, the fact that the Chiefs drafted Jeffrey Bossa in the 5th round this year, who also played middle linebacker, makes things a bit more difficult on George, but I don't think Cam Jones is a guaranteed lock at this point, and even though Jack Cochran is a very valuable special teams player for KC, I mean, basically nobody's played more special team snaps than he has over the last few years, he's also not a guaranteed lock. George played special team snaps in college, so you never know what could happen, especially if the coaching staff is high enough on George to take a risk and bet on his athletic traits. On the subject of athletic traits, defensive tackle Kosiah Izzard out of Penn State. He has a relative athletic score of 9.71, and the Chiefs signed him to a UDFA deal as well. He ran a very fast 4.8540 and a lightning fast 1.56 10-yard split, which is very impressive considering the guy is nearly 300 pounds. Defensive tackle is still a bit light overall from a roster perspective, so keep an eye out for Izzard over the next few months. He was primarily a rotational guy, starting only 7 games in his college career, and all 7 of them were as a freshman. He didn't start a single game his sophomore, junior, or senior year of college. In spite of that, he still logged over 1,330 snaps in college, totaling 78 tackles, 17.5 tackles for loss, 9 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. And before I get to another really intriguing wide receiver that I think could actually make the roster, I did want to mention that the Chiefs might have a punter battle on their hands once again this year. They just signed punter Eddie Shaplitsky to a 1-year deal, and considering Matt Araiza struggled at the back half of the season with getting his punts to actually land inside the 20, so many of them bounced into the freaking end zone, his job is not safe at this point in time. Eddie was punter number 3 in this year's draft, and not only did he have the most net yards per attempt in college last year, but he was top 5 landing punts inside the 20. So, like last year between Matt Araiza and the now Bengals punter Ryan Rico, we might very well have another battle on our hands between punters. Speaking of battles, I need as much talent as humanly possible along the offensive line, and since KC didn't take anybody but Josh Simmons for O-line depth in the draft, I thought the UDFA signing of Esa Pole, the offensive tackle out of Washington State, definitely worth mentioning. He had a 6th or 7th round grade on him, though his arms are sub 34 inches for what it's worth, so maybe he ends up kicking inside after all, you never really know. But he was a 2-year starter at Washington State, and even though he's already almost 24 years old, his story is insane. He didn't even start playing organized football until he was 21. He grew up playing basketball, but he ended up meeting with the football coaches of Shabbat College. I probably butchered that name, but it's a local community college, and he ended up joining the team that year, and he quickly found himself playing left tackle. He started on defense, but quickly was moved to left tackle and actually worked his way up through the college ranks, playing 2 years for Washington State as their left tackle. His weakness is kind of obvious. He lacks experience since he's only been playing a few years, and he did end up needing double knee surgery after the 2023 season. He played every game in 2024, though, and he's someone to watch out for from a depth perspective. The good news here about Esa is he's nowhere near his ceiling, and the Chiefs can definitely build upon that. Next up, I think I have another undrafted wide receiver crush. Everybody loved the Justin Ross signing in recent years after he went undrafted. Nico Remigio was kind of after that. Both of them actually worked their way onto the roster in some capacity. Nico most recently, but the one to watch out for this year is going to be wide receiver Elijah Badger out of Florida. He's a bit of an older prospect at nearly 24 years old, but Scott Barrett said he's one of the most underrated players in this year's wide receiver class, and I can't lie, I really like what I've seen from him. Badger is actually built a similar size to the Chiefs' 4th round draft pick, Jalen Royals. He's 6'1", 200 pounds, and like Royals, was primarily an outside receiver, and he's another athletic prospect. With a 9.27 relative athletic score, he ran a 4.4640, yet also has a very quick 10-yard split, so that helps. When somebody has a very quick 10-yard split, it basically means they are very fast off the line. He only had 39 catches last year, but he had 806 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns. That's almost a 21 yard per catch average. In fact, he was one of just 5 FBS receivers to average over 20 yards per catch last season. And on top of that, he has very sticky hands. 0 drops credited to him on 61 targets. Some of the catches he made, by the way, were very impressive. I was watching his highlights and shortly into them, literally heard one of the broadcasters say, "How in the world did he make that catch?" Well, great question, honestly. He doesn't shy away from contact, and contested catches appear to be no problem for him. He's not only got great timing in his routes, but yards after the catch ability. He's not the most polished receiver. He's still got things to work on. Part of the reason why he went undrafted, but he also has the best missed tackles forced per reception in the last 10 years, just slightly above Luther Burden III. Look, I won't sugarcoat it. Badger has an uphill battle of making the roster, but he does have a shot. I think Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Jalen Royals are absolutely locks this year. Juju probably makes it as well. He's a savvy vet that they love to use in the blocking aspect of things. But from a contract perspective, he's on a cheap 1-year deal, so he's not 100% safe. I think he most likely makes the roster, and if he does, that leaves Elijah Badger fighting with Nico Remigio for that wide receiver 6 spot. But here's why it gets a little difficult. Badger would most likely have to earn the nod as the team's returner, but he doesn't have any punt return experience. He returned 20 kickoffs in 2023, but hasn't recorded a single punt return. So like I said, it's an uphill battle for sure. And if injuries hit the room, I don't want them to, but training camp, preseason, early in the season, you just never know what could end up happening here. And while I'm not going to talk about every player signed today, here's a list so far of every signing or camp invite that I could find. If you want to pause and take a look at them all, make sure to let me know your thoughts on which one of these undrafted players you like the most, who you think has a chance of actually making the roster. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?